In June of 2020, I was asked by my boss of another job to come and work at a bike shop that he was opening up, doing their social media and their digital marketing. Now, it was only a part-time gig. I worked about 12 hours a week for the last 6 months, but it was something I was excited for because I already had another job and I was still trying to maintain my focus on YouTube. I just completed an ebook, and a little bit of part-time work doing something that I already love and want to learn more about sounded ideal. Now, before I tell you what happened and how the story ends, let's talk about some of the lessons that I learned managing their Instagram account and all their various social media platforms. Now, let me start by talking about what accounts we created for the company. They already had a Facebook and an Instagram, but I decided to introduce a TikTok, a Twitter, a LinkedIn, and a YouTube account. Now, let me just say, if you're trying to build your brand with social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube have been the 3 biggest ways that we've gotten lots of impressions and got in front of new people. Those 3 platforms are the powerhouses. But for us, TikTok hasn't been a big growth platform yet. Neither has Twitter, but I do want to say that with Twitter, I think it has real potential with Elon running it, with some of the changes that he's making. I think it's just going to be a little bit of time before he kind of figures that out and irons out some of those innovations that he wants to make. And then with LinkedIn, I have a lot of mixed feelings with LinkedIn. The reason I really made us a LinkedIn is because there's a lot of overlap between the typical kind of core user base of LinkedIn and then the actual kind of customer base that we're going for as a bike shop. With more expensive bikes, the kind of like primary customer that you're going for, the kind of target demographic that tends to buy bikes or expensive bikes in the biggest quantity, tends to be kind of middle-aged males that make more than $50K a year, and they tend to be white. So with LinkedIn, I was like, yo, this social media platform is kind of a layup. It's kind of like the perfect match for that kind of demographic. It's where a lot of those people tend to be. Now, the one thing that I didn't realize about LinkedIn, I haven't really played around with it too much in the past, is that LinkedIn really does require a lot of money if you want to use it to its full marketing potential. They have a lot of payment plans and a lot of ways that you can spend money to get more reach on that platform. So that's something that I kind of put on the back burner in the meanwhile while I've been growing this social media over the last 6 months, to just say, we don't really have a big budget right now for that. I think in the future we might be able to justify it. And clearly there's a lot more that I need to learn here, because it is a really different social media platform than something like a Twitter, an Instagram, or a lot of these other regular platforms. Now, I can already hear a lot of you guys saying, bro, why are you shifting your focus between 6 different social media platforms? Typically in life, if you want the best results, you really got to focus on 1 or 2 things instead of trying to juggle a bunch of things and doing a mid job at a bunch of different tasks. And I hear you. Even though we have 6 different social media platforms, my focus is undoubtedly on Instagram first. When I'm making content, I have Instagram in mind and everything else comes after that. That's definitely my most narrow focus. That's where I put a lot of my time into, doing follow for follower, things like that, really trying to narrow in on Instagram first. Now, the reason that I have these other platforms is because I also have something called Metricool. The social media planner here makes it super easy for me to make an Instagram post, write out the copy, and then just duplicate it and change around the copy or the actual words, the text, the hashtags as I need to for different social media platforms. So for me, it really feels like I'm only really focused on Instagram, and then I'm just able to automatically repost a lot of that content to these different platforms. All I've got to do is just, when I'm duplicating it in Metricool, that social media planner, is just change the amount of text that there is or what hashtags I'm using. If I'm posting a YouTube video through Metricool, obviously got to get the title right, that kind of thing. And one thing that I've really loved about Metricool so far is it helps with so much of my job and so much of what I do. I can print social media reports every month to kind of say, hey, here's our reach, here's our demographic. It'll actually show too for that month what percentage of your audience is coming from what city, what state, what language they speak, I believe, if they're male, female, what their age group is, and it'll show you that as different results for Facebook, Instagram. So you can kind of see, okay, who's following us where, and is our kind of demographic accurate to what we're trying to accomplish as a business? Or a lot of these people that are following us, are they actually somewhere near the business? And that's one thing that I really love about Metricool. It automates it. It gives me that data, which helps me to look good in front of my boss. It also helps me to know if I'm actually doing a good job. And that's something that I really do recommend if you guys are trying to grow a social media brand. I do have this affiliate link here. The first kind of brand that you manage is free. If you guys do more than that, then it's like $12 a month, which is what I have. But if you guys do want to use my affiliate link, awesome. If that's not for you, no problem. Now, between all of these 6 different social media platforms, for probably the last 3 months or so, we've been averaging about 100,000 impressions per month, just slightly under that. Which, if you extrapolate that out by a year, that's about 1 million people per year that we're getting this business in front of. just with social media. Now, once again, out of all the different platforms that we're on, the platforms that get us the most reach are in first place Instagram. Second place is either going to be Facebook or YouTube. Now, as far as Instagram, the actual type of content or the strategies that are working for us the best on Instagram are posting photos and carousels. And I know that that's weird. A lot of people think that photos are dead on Instagram, but the average photo that we're posting right now, if we use all 30 hashtags that I've kind of designed for this page, we're getting in front of 1,000 to 3,000 people average per photo post. Sometimes even more too. There's been photos where we're getting in front of like 5,000 people, which is awesome for a small company. And I just want to say, because I keep getting pushback on this, I keep saying that my photo posts are getting us lots of reach. I've had a lot of people that are like, you don't know what you're talking about. Reels get more reach for me. They're almost kind of mad that I'm telling them, hey, try photos. And you might be right. Reels might work better for you. For some pages I've seen that too. But the thing that I found is photos are back. And yes, Reels are still in for some people. But really, it's going to be up to you to actually test those different content types and see which one works better for your page and your audience. Because for us, we actually get more reach. We get more exposure when we post a photo than a reel, which I also love because it's less time to produce a photo than a reel. And then when we're talking about Facebook and YouTube and actually what strategies are getting us the most reach on those platforms, it's definitely short form video. So Facebook, if you don't know, has Facebook Reels now. Facebook and Instagram, obviously the same company. And then YouTube has YouTube Shorts. And on either one of those platforms, I'm consistently getting somewhere between 200 and like 4,000 views on any of these short form videos I'm dropping. There's obviously a lot of fluctuation when you're talking about short form video. That's because short form video algorithms tend to be more of a kind of merit-based algorithm where you're kind of put into a lottery with your content. I've talked about that in the past. But for us, man, those short form videos on YouTube and on Facebook are definitely getting great results. Just throwing this out there. Don't sleep on Facebook, man. Now, with all of this reach, all of the kind of exposure and impressions that we've been getting as a company, one thing that constantly sticks inside of my mind is that having a lot of exposure in the wrong place is not as significant as having very kind of average exposure in the right place. I want to make sure that as a physical business with a physical location that does a lot of physical service on bikes, we're getting in front of the right people and we're not advertising to, let's say, a group of people in Brazil, Germany, France, right? Because the chances of us actually having any kind of sale with them as a business is just significantly lower than somebody that lives 20 miles away from us. And yes, we are technically an online business, but it's still pretty hard for someone in France to buy a bike from us online, one of these $7,000 bikes that we sell. And either way, a lot of our MAP agreements for these more pricey bikes actually prevent us from selling online. And if I'm being honest, that's actually one issue that I feel like a lot of social media platforms have. It's kind of hard on different social media platforms to get in front of a geographically specific audience. That's one of the things that doing my job I have to get really creative with is how do I make sure that even if we're posting on YouTube or Facebook, these short form videos that are going to go out to thousands of people, how do I try to manicure that and make sure that it's getting in front of a local audience that might actually stop by our shop for service? And this is one way that I actually tell people that Instagram is one of the best social media platforms out there. There's so many different ways to tag stuff on Instagram to get in front of exactly who you want to get in front of. I mean, when you post Reels, now there's the 3 topics that you can choose between. You can choose alt text, you can choose hashtags, you can choose who you want to tag as far as pages or products. There's just so many options with Instagram to make sure that you're getting in front of the right people. I mean, you can use location tags, right? So with Instagram, it is a little bit easier to kind of get in front of that specific audience that I want to than, let's say, with a YouTube short. YouTube's a little bit rougher around the edges with getting hyper specific with your tags. So if you're doing something on Instagram, like trying to grow a business or a brand, definitely use all of those tagging options to your advantage. And Facebook has it too, a little bit less, but with Facebook pages and stuff, you can get a little bit more specific. But, you know, just saying, YouTube's a little bit lacking in that department. When I look at all of the content that I've created over the last 6 months, one thing that's become apparent to me that I really want to share with you guys is social media doesn't always have to be about hitting a home run. Every short or every reel that you drop doesn't have to have the intention of getting in front of 100,000 people. It's an awesome thing when that happens, for sure. Like, that's kind of a dream, right? But you shouldn't feel down on yourself if you're not accomplishing that. And here's why. Is sometimes when you're dealing with budget constraints, time constraints, consistency can actually be a better tool for you to focus on if you're not in the mind state to maybe hit that home run reel that's going to get in front of 1 million people. Consistency is equally as important, because what it's going to help you to do is kind of build that trust. In marketing, we have something called the rule of 7, which basically means you have to get in front of the average person 7 times with your brand or with your offer before they're even going to consider buying that product or service from you. So basically, even if you're hitting 100,000 people with your reel and it's doing great, your conversion may not be great on the amount of people that are actually stopping by your business, that are actually buying from your business, because they don't have that trust or that rapport that's built up with you yet. You haven't provided any sort of value over time with them. And by sort of a lack of consistency as far as what they're actually seeing, you're not getting in front of them enough, you're probably not going to be able to close the deal as much as somebody that gets in front of, let's say, 10,000 people, but he's in front of them every day. They know exactly who that person is, what that business is, what that brand stands for. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, yo, you don't always have to worry about hitting that home run. Think in terms of consistencies. Like, how can I build these relationships and deliver value to people so that they keep coming back to my company, they keep coming back to my page, they keep coming back to my brand? And I know a lot of you guys are going to cringe at me saying, give away as much value as possible, provide as much value as possible. I used to cringe when I would hear people online say that. I'm like, what are you talking about? What does that actually mean for me? Like, it's not something that's tangible, and it's not something that's easily kind of duplicatable, replicatable. How do I provide value to my audience? I can't tell you guys exactly what to do for yours, but I will tell you exactly what we do for our audience. One thing that I've been very intentional about with this page for this bike shop is saying, okay, we're a bike shop in Utah. On social media, there's not a lot of news outlets that cover kind of mountain biking, cycling in Utah. There are a lot of websites, or there's a lot of kind of local newspapers that'll talk about events, different things that are going on. But on social media, there's not a lot of kind of theme pages, news pages that talk about this kind of thing. So if you're somebody in that mountain biking community in Utah and you're like really passionate about this, we're one of the only places where you can come and get dope news or interesting stories about what's going on in the biking community. That's one way that we're able to use kind of a gap in the market to say, hey, we're going to fill this gap. It's an indirect service that we provide. Like, our first service is obviously fixing bikes, selling bikes, right? But this is something else that we can provide for free that's going to help people to actually want to come into our shop, build those relationships, and constantly stay on our page, kind of being inundated with our brand, who we are, what we stand for. And with that, another thing that I'll do is I'll use the expertise of the people in the bike shop around me to kind of walk up to them and ask them questions to make content, to make reels, as if I'm somebody with a hyper-specific problem. And I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm somebody with only $1,500 to spend who wants a great commuter e-bike. I want an e-bike that's going to get me around the city, but I'm not looking to climb up rocks or do anything crazy. I'm not going to be on gravel trails. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm trying to get around on the streets, right? I'll actually walk up to the different guys in the shop and say, hey man, if you had a $1,500 budget and you're looking for a great bike to ride around the city, which one are you picking? And I'll ask these hyper-specific questions that the average customer might have, and I'll ask them of all these guys in the shop and get the different opinions and show off the different bikes, show off the different things that they have to offer. So as far as value, it's like we're matching them with their kind of perfect bike for free. They're getting a free service and knowing exactly what their best option would be given their circumstances. So basically, with our sort of Instagram first social media strategy, where I'm reposting stuff, using Metricool, my goal has kind of become, I'm going to entertain people with news. I'm going to provide this value that's a gap in the market right now to keep them entertained, to keep them coming back to our page, to keep them mindful of who we are, what our brand is, where we're at. And then what I'm doing is I'm also trying to, kind of solve their problems to say, like, hey, whatever you guys are doing, if you're like into hardcore mountain biking and these are the problems that you're facing, this bike might be right for you. And, we'll be super honest with the people too about, yes, we sell these 2 bikes, but we like this one better for this reason. And I'll get these different opinions of these different people. I think it's important with social media, as kind of non-tangible as it is, or it might sound kind of weird, is you got to figure out what value can I provide to people. This is going to help you to grow if people actually feel like they're getting something from your page, right? You don't just want to constantly be trying to sell people and take. You also want to be kind of giving them something in return for following you. And to be honest with you, that's something that I'm trying to get better with this page. Is I think right now we have like 40% sales content and 60% kind of selfless, entertaining news, value type content. So I want to kind of fix that ratio going into this new year. So with all of that said, where does that leave me with the bike shop right now? Well, I'm not working it as a part-time gig anymore. I actually got hired on full-time to the bike shop. To make a long story short, I basically went and kind of petitioned my boss, or pitched him on the idea. I said, hey, I want more responsibility. I think there's a lot that we could do around here in terms of marketing, kind of fleshing things out and building things out. And he did go for it. So I got a full-time job now, which is awesome. That's something I've kind of been wanting for the last few months. I'm gonna really be aggressive about growing that social media, but I'm also gonna be handling all of the website, revamping the entire website for this bike shop. This is super cool. One thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do product reviews where we do honest reviews in the shop. And then we're gonna tie that video that we post on YouTube as a YouTube short to a QR code that we're gonna put on the back of the actual tags on these bikes in the shop. So if a salesman can't get to a customer, or it's one of those customers like me that really likes to shop on their own without a bunch of people bugging them, they can scan those QR codes on a bike that they're interested in and get an honest review there in the shop via video, which I think is gonna be awesome.